Many tickets end up being paid that simply shouldn't be. There are two main parking tickets issued here in the UK, which you'll need to distinguish between: parking charge notices and penalty charge notices. They may seem very similar, but how they work is actually very different. If the parking contravention was on private property, usually a private car park connected to a business like a supermarket car park, then you'll have been issued with a parking charge notice. But if the parking contravention was committed on council land, you'll have received a penalty charge notice instead. A council penalty charge notice is an official fine, which means there's a strict process to follow. But a private parking charge notice, it's more like an invoice, so what can happen may differ from case to case. Ignore a council penalty charge notice, then after 28 days, the council will send out a formal notice called a charge certificate. This notice won't just inform you of the missed payment deadline. Oh no. It'll also increase the fine by 50%. You'll only get 14 days to pay that, or a court order will be issued, which could then result in the use of a bailiff. In short, if it's a penalty charge notice from the council, then either pay up or appeal promptly. Never ignore it. Also, it's important to remember that if you do pay your council PCN within 14 days of receiving the fine, you'll be able to get a 50% reduction in the fee. So if you don't actually have a good reason for appealing, you might want to pay up sooner. So how do you actually appeal a council PCN? Well, someone from the local authority will have either given you the PCN in person by leaving it on your car, or you'll have received a letter about it in the post. How you receive the PCN will determine how you should respond. If you received it in person or found it on your car, then you need to make an informal appeal to the council first. Normally this involves writing a letter that details why you think that the PCN was wrongly issued. If that informal appeal is rejected, then you can escalate the appeal to a formal appeal, also known as a representation. You may want to gather even more evidence for a formal appeal. If you received your PCN as a letter through the door, then you won't be able to do the informal appeal and you'll have to skip straight to the formal appeal process. To actually make your appeal, you need the PCN number from your ticket. With this, you should be able to access the appeals section of the relevant council's website and submit your information on there. Without a doubt, the hardest part of all of this is writing the letter itself. You'll need to gather up the evidence that you think is in your favour and lay it out clearly for the council to judge. This is where you may prefer to seek the advice of a solicitor. This could cost far less than you might imagine, with services like JustAnswer offering a trial for only £5. I'll leave a link in the description to that. So how about the laws for paying a private parking charge notice? In reality, you aren't actually legally obliged to pay a private land car park fine unless told to do so by a court. However, it may be well worth considering a prompt payment to avoid further stress, any worry, and any potential legal action. Plus, many companies, like with the council, offer a decent reduction in your fine for an early payment. If you do just ignore a private parking ticket, it's likely that the company will send out payment reminders, add late charges, or even threaten legal action. But in reality, there's nothing private companies can do to collect money unless they take you to court. But that doesn't mean that you should just ignore a private parking fine. It's fairly likely that the company who issued you the ticket will be willing to involve the courts, so you can't just forget about them. If they do take court action, a judge may make it your legal responsibility to pay, and the fine may become greater due to court costs. You may also be issued with a county court judgment or a court decree in Scotland. I've researched these and they're both really serious. They'll impact your credit report, making credit and mortgages possibly quite hard to obtain in the future. If you then ignore the CCJ or court decree, you'll very quickly hear the sound of a bailiff knocking on the door. To appeal a private parking charge notice, you should follow the instructions on your ticket. Usually you'll be accessing the parking company's website and initially appealing directly to the parking company on there. If your initial appeal is rejected, then you have 21 days to make a second appeal to either Poplar or the IPC, depending upon which the parking company is linked to. If a company is not registered with any accredited trade association, then you need to proceed with caution. These companies cannot contact the DVLA for your address, so they can only send the fine by collecting your address from other means. which may not be legal. Do your research, and if in any doubt, you can check if a company is an ATA member by calling the British Parking Association. Beware though, the call isn't free. To start your Poplar or IPC appeal, you'll need a few bits of information, such as your car's registration number, the reference number from your parking charge notice, and the 10-digit verification code from your initial appeal's rejection. If the company didn't provide this code, then get onto them straight away, as it's required to be able to submit your Poplar or IPC appeal. Once your appeal is submitted online, it can take 6 to 8 weeks for a decision to be made. If it's successful, then congratulations, no fine to pay. If, however, that gets rejected, then you'll have 28 days to pay up, or the original parking company can take legal action against you. Since this is your last chance to appeal before any legal action is taken, you really should make every effort to make your case as strong as possible. Again, this is where you may prefer to seek the advice of a solicitor. So what are some good reasons to appeal against a ticket? Firstly, parking companies and councils are obligated to make their parking rules clear. If these were obstructed or absent, then that could give you good grounds for an appeal. But instead of just simply stating that you believe the signage was unclear, you could greatly strengthen your appeal by returning to the scene of the crime and snapping a few photos on your phone as evidence. Another reason to appeal might be that you broke down in the car park and needed to sit and wait for a recovery service. In this case, try and get some sort of invoice from the mechanic or a witness statement from them in order to support your appeal. In a similar vein, if pretty much any genuine emergency prevented you from returning to your car or from exiting the car park on time, then so long as you can prove it, you should have good grounds for an appeal. Your original ticket may have accused you of staying a couple of minutes longer than you paid for. But the reality is, there's actually a 10-minute grace period for car parks to give people time to get back to their cars and to exit the car park. So if a private firm attendant issued you with a parking fine when you overstayed by less than 10 minutes, you could use this loophole to get out of having to pay. Broken parking machines are one of the most common excuses for not having to pay your ticket. However, some private car parks state that you should not pay when the car parking machine isn't working. But are those signs clear and easy to read? Again, if they're obstructed, then you could snap some photos on your phone to support your appeal. Some payment machines ask you to enter your vehicle's registration number. If you got a ticket simply because you entered your registration number wrong, then you shouldn't have to pay. You are not allowed to edit or change your appeal after it's submitted. Therefore, it's important to take your time beforehand in order to prepare your appeal and include everything you need for it to be successful. There's many online solicitors. JustAnswer, for example, only cost £5 for a trial, and one of my colleagues managed to save over £270 on his ticket using their service. I've linked that in the description, and if you use that link, you'll also be supporting Money Nerd, so thank you.